That villa was bought with money she got through fraud. Money she stole from our family. I have every right to take it back. The shrill cry that tore through the silence of the courtroom belonged to my sister Kim. Her voice echoed against the high ceiling, striking my eardrums like a discordant fanfare. I sat quietly at the defendant's table and simply watched the scene unfold. Judge Watson, seated at the bench, should have been banging his gavel and calling for order, yet he remained strangely silent. In fact, the look he gave Kim was almost tender, like a grandfather indulgently watching a grandchild throw a tantrum. But the moment his gaze shifted to me, it turned as cold and unforgiving as ice. Defendant Hillary Thompson, the plaintiff's accusation is extremely serious. If you misappropriated shared family assets and used them for personal gain to purchase property, this goes far beyond a simple civil dispute. His voice was low and heavy, carrying the weight of judgment. The atmosphere in the courtroom felt as if the verdict had already been decided. The gallery was packed with local onlookers, no doubt summoned by Kim through social media, whose eyes sized me up like I was some greedy traitor, a witch who betrayed her family. Beside me, my attorney Ben Miller let his pen move lightly across his notepad, the only rational sound in the entire room. Without looking at me, he murmured, "Not yet." I took a deep breath. What filled my lungs was that familiar courtroom smell: old paper, dust, and the sterile yet rotten scent of concentrated human malice. On the witness stand, Kim dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief, wiping away perfectly calculated tears. Her acting could fool an Oscar judge. "Your Honor, my sister has no right to own that property. Everything she has was built on dirty money. The precious inheritance our grandfather left us, Her voice broke. A flawless performance. Until this moment, I don't think I truly understood how blood ties can become the sharpest blade of all. This courtroom spectacle wasn't just a fight over assets. It was a grand, malicious ritual designed to deny my entire life and drag it through the mud. My life had never been the dark conspiracy Kim described. My battlefield was far from here. New York, the only place where my talent could breathe freely, unrestrained by anyone. "Hillary, are you a machine or something? You'll fall apart if you don't take a break once in a while." A colleague had said that to me, right before dragging me for the first time to a resort area in Aspen, Colorado. There, I was struck speechless. A world of silver and snow. The moment I inhaled that crisp, freezing air, I heard a switch flip inside me. That winter, I bought my first villa in Aspen, a modern glass lodge perched on the edge of a cliff. Every weekend I flew there, strapped on skis, and hurled myself down the steep slopes. The sensation of slicing through the wind and mastering gravity felt eerily similar to riding the fluctuations of the market. No one was there. Just me, the mountain, and overwhelming freedom. And in the summer, I found a second paradise. Key West, Florida. A white mansion overlooking the brilliant blue sea. There, I devoted myself to scuba diving. Underwater, all the noise of the world disappeared. All I could hear was my own breath and the soft popping of bubbles. Amid the schools of colorful fish, I could return to being nothing more than a living creature. These two villas were sanctuaries, places I had earned by my own power, where I could remain entirely myself. Peace shattered one winter weekend while I was staying in the Aspen Lodge. The silence I treasured most was blown apart by the harsh ring of the doorbell. When I opened the door, a gust of cold air swept in, along with a cloud of overpowering perfume. "Well, well, so this is where you've been hiding, Hillary." It was my sister Kim. She barged in without waiting for my response, clomping across the living room in her platform boots as if she owned the place. I had no idea how she even found this location, but one look at her obsessive glare made it clear she hadn't cared what methods she used. Standing in the center of the room, she slowly scanned the double-height ceiling, the Italian sofas, and the contemporary art on the walls, as if appraising each item. "Nice view, lovely fireplace, but this rug? Terrible taste. If I lived here, I'd replace it with something brighter." "What are you doing here, Kim?" "Leave or I'm calling the police for trespassing." I said it coldly. She gave a bored snort in response. "Trespassing? Why would I be accused of trespassing when I'm simply coming to see my property?" She turned to face me slowly, her lips twisting into a smile. There wasn't a trace of sisterly affection in her eyes. What existed there was an incomprehensible sense of superiority and a pitch-black certainty. Don't tell me you actually think you're talented. You, plain, slow, and always trailing behind me like some pathetic little shadow. Someone like you could never afford a mansion like this on your own. I built my career on Wall Street. Don't you dare lie to me. Her scream rattled the glass windows. There's no way you bought this place with your own money. You spent Grandpa's inheritance behind our backs, didn't you? You must have found some secret account and stolen everything. This place was bought with family money, which means this villa belongs to us. I was so stunned I couldn't speak. Our grandfather had been a modest watchmaker. His estate had consisted of an old house and a modest savings account. There was no secret fortune, no hidden assets worth millions. Her accusation was pure delusion, but Kim's bloodshot eyes showed she believed that delusion with terrifying certainty. That money should have been managed by me, the eldest daughter, not by an incompetent little sister like you. I am the rightful heir of the Thompson family, which means this villa was bought with my money. So this is my home. Even after I forced Kim out, the echo of her malice lingered. And a few weeks later, that malice arrived at my office in the form of an official document. My secretary, looking nervous, handed me a thick envelope. The sender, Redmond Hills District Court. Inside was a lawsuit titled Claim for Restitution of Unjust Enrichment and Petition for Confirmation of Real Estate Ownership. The plaintiff, Kim Thompson. Her attorney, Victor Johnson, a local lawyer I'd never heard of. As I read through the contents, my anger gave way to dizziness. It was a work of fiction. Defendant Hillary, after the death of her grandfather, unlawfully removed cash and several $1 million worth of precious metals from the estate, withholding them from the plaintiff. The villa in question was purchased using these misappropriated assets. There wasn't a shred of evidence, just Kim's twisted conviction that my sister couldn't possibly succeed on her own, followed by the absurd leap of logic that, therefore, there must have been money. Any sensible judge would have thrown it out in the first hearing, but the case had been accepted. A trial date had been set. I picked up the phone and called Kim. The line didn't even ring once before she answered, as if she had been waiting for this exact moment. So, you're finally ready to confess? Her triumphant voice echoed through the receiver. Kim, enough. Drop this ridiculous lawsuit. You know perfectly well Grandpa didn't have any secret assets. Don't act innocent. Give me half of what you have. No, 80% with damages. And I might consider forgiving you. There was no reasoning with her. In her mind, I was already the cunning thief, and she was the wronged heroine. Her script was complete. You're the one who will be humiliated in court, Kim. Oh, really? I wouldn't worry about me. I have justice on my side. Judge Watson was very sympathetic when I explained everything. He said, "You poor thing, I'll make it right." A chill shot down my spine at the sound of that name. Why was a judge listening privately to the plaintiff before the trial had even begun? Why was he promising to make it right? A dark, opaque shadow had fallen over a place that should have been the sanctuary of justice. Prepare yourself, Hillary. You're going to return the life you stole from me. She hung up. The monotonous tone that followed sounded like the signal for a war that would drag us both into a swamp. I set the receiver down and looked out at the Manhattan skyline beyond my window. On the day of the first hearing, the Redmond Hills District Court felt nothing like a place where justice was supposed to be upheld. The moment I walked into the courtroom, a sharp sense of wrongness hit me. The invisible wall that should have existed between the plaintiff's table and the judge's bench simply wasn't there. Before the session even began, Victor Johnson, Kim's attorney, strolled up to Judge Watson and chatted with him as casually as if they were discussing weekend golf plans. The judge laughed warmly, his shoulders shaking like a doting grandfather. "All rise." The bailiff's command tightened the air, superficially. Once the hearing began, the courtroom transformed into a stage set exclusively for Kim's one-woman show. Your Honor, my client Kim has suffered for years because of her sister's misconduct. She stands before you today not for money, but to restore the bonds of family that were broken, and to reclaim justice. When Attorney Johnson spoke with exaggerated gestures, Kim would cover her face with a handkerchief at just the right moment, letting out soft sobs. It was a third-rate performance. I immediately moved to the object. Objection. The plaintiff has presented no objective. Silence! Judge Watson's furious roar sliced through my words like a whip. The friendly smile from earlier had vanished. In its place was open disgust directed squarely at me. Defendant, you do not have permission to speak. This is my first time meeting Miss Kim, but her heartfelt plea has moved me. He said it with a solemnity so exaggerated it was almost theatrical. I intend to remain impartial, of course, but family matters cannot be measured by numbers and documents alone. People from the city like you may not understand that. A wave of snickering spread through the gallery. The judge wasn't ruling by law, he was ruling by atmosphere. The bank statements and pay stubs I had submitted, solid proof of my legitimate income, were shoved aside with a dismissive, "I'll review these later." Meanwhile, Kim's baseless slander, "My sister has always had sticky fingers," was recorded faithfully as important testimony. After that humiliating stretch of nonsense, a recess was called. In the hallway, I passed Attorney Johnson, who leaned in toward the judge and whispered, loud enough for me to hear every word. They acted with such arrogance, as if their empire wouldn't be touched no matter if I heard them or not. Please give my regards to your wife regarding that matter. We'll make sure this year's report is extra generous. Oh, that will be most welcome. My wife will be delighted. I froze. They weren't even covert. This wasn't a courtroom. It was their private social club, and I was just the entertainment to be hunted. Watson is the judge? Sorry, find someone else. Our firm can't handle a case like this. Please don't call again. After the first hearing, I went from one local law office to another. Every single response was the same. The moment I mentioned Judge Watson's name, their expressions changed, fear flashing across their faces. Before they hung up, turned me away or politely refused. Opposing him meant professional suicide. I was utterly alone. Back in my hotel room, I stared up at the ceiling. Kim's triumphant grin and Watson's mocking gaze drifted across my mind. A whisper urged me, give up. But what rose inside me next was a molten, volcanic anger. If no local lawyer would stand up to them, then I needed someone from outside, someone they couldn't touch. I returned to New York and reached out to one man, Ben Miller, a ruthless corporate attorney known for dancing with the devil if it meant winning. We had once clashed during a hostile takeover case. I knew firsthand how merciless he could be. Inside his high-rise Manhattan office, he listened to the entire story, then smirked as he gazed out the window. I see. A delusional big sister and a country king strutting around naked. Fascinating. He tossed a thick file onto the desk before me. Hillary, your mistake was trying to fight with righteousness. Logic doesn't work on people like them. Their game is connections and pride. So we use their own rules and cut off their heads with it. How do we use them? Watson is overconfident. He thinks he's invincible on his home turf, which means he's sloppy. And you're a financial professional. Track the money. People like him always leave a trail. Ben's eyes gleamed coldly, like a predator sizing up its prey. Listen carefully. Drop your emotions, don't explode in the courtroom, convert that anger into ammunition. Evidence. I'll handle the performance in court. You prepare the bullets. At that moment, my resolve hardened. I was done being the victim. We shook hands. His hand was cold, but no handshake had ever felt so reliable. Instead of returning to New York, I barricaded myself in the Aspen Villa. The Italian-made table vanished beneath piles of documents. The walls were covered in color-coded sticky notes, tracing every event in chronological detail. Ben had said, "Forget emotion. Look at the numbers." I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. Behind my eyelids, I reshaped the flames of anger into icy focus. I was a Wall Street portfolio manager. Someone who had moved hundreds of millions, unmasked corporate fraud, and spotted the faintest traces of hidden schemes. The tapping of my enter key echoed through the quiet room. My fingers glided across the keyboard like a pianist. Smooth, precise, relentless. My first target, Judge Watson's financial records. A public official's salary is publicly disclosed, and the upper limit is obvious. But the information I gathered from social media and gossip articles contradicted it entirely. Sightings at luxury members-only clubs, the endless stream of brand-new designer bags his wife flaunted on Instagram, and their frequent overseas trips. The numbers didn't add up. Somewhere, an invisible faucet had to be pouring money in. Next, I dug into Kim's financial situation. Ironically, what helped me most was the harassment from our opposing counsel, Victor Johnson. During discovery, he had tried to exhaust us by dumping years' worth of receipts and irrelevant transaction records on us. Raw, unfiltered data. A classic data dump tactic. A normal person would lose the will to fight just from seeing that mountain of garbage. But they picked the wrong opponent. I'm a woman trained to spot a stray blip among tens of thousands of daily transactions. And inside this massive pile, they had hidden to hide. The truth was buried. Found it. Amid the charges on her husband's family credit card, there was a strange noise. Every month on the same day, the same amount was withdrawn under vague labels like consulting fee or membership fee. Worse, every recipient was a paper company with no real business. She wasn't simply overspending. The money wasn't being used, it was being returned. A monthly fixed bribe funneled back to someone. Even after dawn broke, I didn't move from my monitor. Swimming through an ocean of data, I hunted desperately for anything that felt wrong. On the third night, just before sunrise, my bloodshot eyes caught a peculiar numerical pattern in the corner of the screen. It was tiny, something anyone else would overlook. But once pulled, the entire fabric began to unravel. Outside, the blizzard had stopped, and a quiet morning was about to begin. But the real storm was yet to come. I pulled my phone from my pocket and sent Ben a short message. "The bullets are ready. Let's go hunting." The first piece I found was a single photograph, an old friend's social media account of Kim's, buried deep in its unlocked archive, dated 2 years ago. Location: a private Caribbean island. In the background, wearing matching aloha shirts and raising cocktail glasses with beaming smiles. Kim and Judge Watson. Their claim of meeting for the first time at the initial hearing crumbled instantly. But I dug deeper. Why were they so close? Following the money, a sponsor emerged behind Kim. Her husband, George, a local real estate tycoon with a mutually beneficial relationship with Judge Watson. Further investigation revealed that from Kim's personal allowance account, funded by George, monthly payments were being sent to a corporation represented by the judge's wife. A membership fee for the aristocratic little club they had built over the years. Kim was completely intoxicated by her own sense of privilege. I have the judge behind me. Crushing my useless sister takes nothing more than a flick of my finger. That's what she must have believed. In her mind, my success didn't exist. There's no way that incompetent Hillary could earn money on her own. She must have stolen the inheritance. It was the only way she could process reality. Therefore, she truly believed that punishing me and seizing everything was justice. Finally, I looked down at the last document in my hand. A racehorse registration record, missing from the judge's asset list. Name, Justice Gold. Listed owners, the judge. And George's company. I let out a dry laugh. Justice Gold, huh? The irony was astounding. They co-owned an expensive racehorse, splitting maintenance costs and prize money. A blatant conflict of interest. A business partner presiding over his own partner's case. Checkmate, Kim. Under the desk lamp, I stared at the printed evidence. Bathed in pale blue light, those sheets of paper were no longer mere paper. It was the guillotine blade that would sever their social lives. The morning of the final battle. I downed a stronger than usual black coffee and straightened the collar of my suit in front of the mirror. The woman reflected there was no longer a frightened younger sister. She looked like a soldier heading to the battlefield. On the way to the courthouse, Ben sat in the passenger seat, flipping through a stack of documents and whistling cheerfully. Listen, Hillary, you're not the star today. The evidence is. All you need to do is enjoy the show from the best seat in the house. Seeing his fearless grin, the pounding in my chest settled into a calm, steady beat. When we entered the courtroom, the same stagnant air hung heavy as always. But strangely, the hostility that once pierced my skin now felt like nothing more than a hollow breeze. Kim sat in the plaintiff's seat. When she saw me, she gave a smug, almost pitying smile. Neither she nor Judge Watson had the faintest idea. They didn't realize the floor beneath their feet had already collapsed. The court will now resume. With the judge's cue, Kim's final testimony began. It was an Oscar-worthy performance. I just wanted my little sister to change her ways. That money filled with our family memories. I didn't want her to waste it on such extravagant pleasures. She trembled at the stand, dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief. Sympathetic sighs drifted from the gallery. I pray for my sister. I hope she admits her wrongs and returns to the right path. Perfect. In her world, she was the saint and I was the lost lamb. The judge nodded deeply, wearing a look of admiration. Your love for your family is clear as day. Now then, for the defense. Any rebuttals? If not, we'll proceed to the verdict. He didn't even glance at me as he began tidying his documents, as if saying the conclusion was already obvious and any further time spent was pointless. Then Ben slowly stood. Your Honor, before you issue a verdict, there are a few facts we need to clarify. His voice was low, yet sharp enough to carry to every corner of the courtroom. Judge Watson frowned in irritation. Make it brief. The facts are already clear. Oh, it'll be brief. First, if you would look at this photo. Ben projected a single image onto the screen. The atmosphere in the courtroom froze instantly. Blue Caribbean sky, white sandy beach, and standing there shoulder to shoulder in matching aloha shirts, beaming at the camera. Kim and Judge Watson. What? Kim gasped, her breath catching like a scream. Color drained from the judge's face as if someone had pulled a plug. When was this taken? I don't recall. He tried to fumble through an excuse, but Ben cut him off mercilessly. August 15th, 2 years ago. Your Honor, you stated at the first hearing that you were meeting the plaintiff for the first time. This seems like quite the intimate first meeting. That was merely a coincidence. We happened to run into each other on vacation. A coincidence? Then perhaps this next document is also a coincidence? The screen changed. To the co-ownership contract for the racehorse Justice Gold. The signatures of the judge and Kim's representative sat neatly side by side. According to our investigation, 90% of this horse's maintenance fees are paid by the plaintiff's side. Yet prize money is split evenly. Is this not effectively a financial exchange? A wave of uneasy murmurs washed through the courtroom. The atmosphere of sympathy was gone, replaced by suspicion, and the thrill of scandal. Victor Johnson, Kim's attorney, leapt to his feet. Objection. This is irrelevant to the case. But his voice cracked. Ben stared coldly at the judge and presented one final document. A bank record. Furthermore, Kim has been sending substantial monthly consulting fees to a corporation represented by your wife. The total amounts to roughly 20% of this vacation home's value. He paused for one breath, then delivered the killing blow in a voice that echoed through the courtroom. Judge Watson, you maintained a significant conflict of interest with the plaintiff while concealing it and presiding over this case. Your impartiality is already dead. At that moment, the pen slipped from the judge's fingers. The dry clatter as it hit the floor sounded like the death knell of his career. Kim turned ghostly pale, her saintly facade crumbling beyond recognition. Judge Watson opened and closed his mouth in silence, like a fish gasping for air. The evidence projected on the screen, the money trail exposing his relationship with Kim and the others, was so blatant that no excuse could survive it. The false image he had built as a guardian of the law collapsed with an audible crack. This is a misunderstanding. The donations to my wife's company were purely charitable. Judge Watson's desperate excuse was cut down by Ben with icy precision. Charity? The moment you receive personal gain from the plaintiff in a case you're presiding over, it's over. Judge, you've just smashed your own fingers with your own gavel. That was the signal. The gallery erupted into chaos. Reporters pulled out their phones all at once, eager to hammer out this colossal scandal. What is happening? The only one who couldn't grasp the situation was Kim. She sprang to her feet, shrieking, Judge, say something. My sister is a thief. You're on our side. This isn't what you promised. That statement was the final nail in the coffin. It was practically a confession of collusion. The courtroom roared with shock, mixed with ridicule and contempt. Attorney Johnson buried his face in his hands, and Judge Watson covered his with both palms. Kim kept screaming, but no one was listening anymore. Just before adjournment was called, she and I locked eyes. There was no superiority left in her gaze, only bottomless fear. She had finally realized it. The Pandora's box she opened was now devouring her. the pride she preserved only by looking down on me, her younger sister, shattered into dust. Judge Watson's resignation and the launch of a full investigation effectively ended the case. My victory was certain, and nothing threatened my ownership of the vacation home anymore. A few months later, the news was flooded with reports. The former Judge Watson arrested on bribery charges, and George, Kim's husband and her co-conspirator, arrested soon after. His real estate empire crumbled under the weight of exposed corruption, and for Kim, a harsher reality awaited. For his own survival, George claimed my wife acted entirely on her own and sent her divorce papers from prison. With their assets frozen, she wouldn't see even a penny in the settlement. What remained for her was not her privileged status. Instead, she faced the hefty legal fees awarded to me after her defeat, the mountain of credit card debt she had amassed through her own reckless spending. Above all, the enormous punitive fines imposed by the court for filing a malicious, fraudulent lawsuit. I returned to my lodge in Aspen for the first time in a while. Sitting before the fireplace, I read through the latest report from Ben. Kim was now without support, drowning in debts she could never repay. Her last remaining asset, the childhood home we inherited from our grandfather, where she had been living, was about to be seized by creditors and put up for auction. I picked up my phone and called Ben. Start the process. Before it's auctioned, I am going to buy that house. Are you serious? Hillary, she tried to destroy you. Even if you buy it, she won't be able to afford rent. That's fine. I don't want her family on the streets. I'll let her live there. You're either too kind or too cruel. Tell her this. The new owner of that house is Hillary Thompson, and if she doesn't want to be thrown out, she'd better live modestly. A few hours later, my phone vibrated. It was Kim. I hesitated before answering, but the voice that came through wasn't the screeching hysteria I remembered. It was weak, trembling. Why? After everything I did, why would you save the house? Don't misunderstand, Kim. I'm not giving you the house. It's mine now. I stared into the flames as I spoke, quiet but merciless. You're only being allowed to live in my home. Think of it as a debt that will never disappear. Every day you live under that roof, remember your own powerlessness and who is letting you stay alive. Do you still think my success was fraudulent? A long silence followed. Then she finally spoke, voice breaking. No, I was just scared. If I admitted you succeeded on your own, then everything I clung to as the older sister would fall apart. I needed you to be useless, so I didn't have to face the fact that I was the weak one. I didn't want to see it. Looking down on you was the only way I could hold myself together. I'm so sorry. I'm really, really sorry, Hillary. On the other end of the line, Kim broke down in tears. It wasn't jealousy. It was the sound of someone crushed by the weight of their own foolishness. I accept your apology. Now just live your life with gratitude for the roof over your head. I ended the call with those few words. Things would never return to the way they once were, but she would never look down on me again.